I'm so glad to see everybody out here. Next phase is to the polls, right?
Yes.
I'm more than honored to introduce my friend, my brother, and let you know who Adam Hernandez is. But if by chance, and I don't know where you could have been, under a rock, if by chance you don't know Adam Hernandez, please spend the next few months getting to know who that is.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
It's important that you vote. It's important that you get your family out the house and vote. This is a season and an election that will make or break the city. I say that unapologetically, okay? Right now, I read an article on the airplane and it said that Lubbock, Texas ranks amongst the top 50 worst run cities in America. You can Google it.
Yeah, I saw it.
That is a direct reflection of city government.
That's right.
That is a direct reflection of city government. I don't stand here to tell you he's got all the answers, but I will tell you that I've worked really close with him. If you know me at all, you know I don't put my name behind anybody that I can't back up their work. When you call Adam Hernandez, he comes. Very briefly, and he'll be the person that I'll present to you, but I want to make sure you understand what this election means. I was afforded the opportunity to go to Austin, Texas to speak to the House of Representatives about bullying and racism in Lubbock, Texas. In doing that, one of the constituents asked me, well, what does your mayor say about it? What do your city leaders say about it? So in honesty and fairness, I had to get back to my hotel and I had to email my mayor and some of the city leaders. That was in April 17th to be exact. Today is December 4th. I'm still waiting for a response. When the students at Oil Sladen needed feminine products, they reached out to Adam Hernandez. He reached out to us. See, in these positions, you're just one person. You can't do it all. You can't fix it all. But he got a group of folks together, and we flooded Oil Sladen with the pads. When little Cornelius was murdered right here in Lubbock, Texas, and his family wanted to hear from the city and from the community, just after a fresh snow in Lubbock, Texas, I walked alongside Adam Hernandez. When we have murders, robberies, and all of the things that go on all over Lubbock, don't get it twisted. I'm not just talking about East Lubbock. We have issues. It didn't say certain parts of Lubbock. It said Lubbock, Texas. But when we call him, when I call him, he comes. He comes. I'm still waiting on that one email. So don't vote for your friends. Don't vote because you know them and that's who you see when you go to family dinner. There's people that look like me that I'm not voting for. Because it's so much bigger than that. But Adam Hernandez knows and cares about the city, not just area codes. He's reachable, he's touchable, and he responds. Even if you don't like the response, he responds, right?
That's right.
So I want to introduce to some and present to those of us that know him, my mayor, Adam Hernandez.
Goodness. I just got to take a moment and recognize the diversity in this room. Well, thank you, Ms. Phyllis, for those beautiful words. I'll start by saying thank you all for being here this evening. I know y'all could be many other places doing many other things, and so I really am grateful for your time and your presence.
Yes.
So, y'all might be surprised to learn that this gathering tonight is not all about me. And it's not all about me because this isn't just my city. This is our city. And as a city, we have a decision to make in May about what type of leadership we want going forward and what we want Lubbock's future to look like. Do we want more of the same old thing? Or are we finally ready for a change?
Ready for change.
Well, the reason why I'm standing here in front of all of you tonight is to offer something different than we've seen in the past. Here in Lubbock, for the 42 years I've been alive, less than 10% of our city's population has chosen the mayor for the other 90%. And this has been able to happen over and over because that 10% shows up to vote in every single election cycle. And most of everybody else stays home. Now there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the reasons we hear all the time from people is that the candidates are all the same. So they don't feel like they have an option that will get them a different result. And that's where I enter the scene. So who am I? My name is Adam Hernandez, and I've lived my whole life here in Lubbock, Texas. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family, and my early life was pretty rough. I grew up in East Lubbock, and I graduated from Estacado High School in 1999. I've worked all sorts of jobs that many people here in Lubbock have worked. I've worked in restaurants, I've worked in construction, I've done landscaping, and a lot of other odd jobs. I've also been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years and have built and maintained my own brand. I've helped to raise 2 daughters, and I lost my oldest to suicide in 2018. In the summer of 2020, I became a co-founder of Lubbock Compact, which is a public policy think tank and action group. And the reason why Lubbock Compact was created was because of the frustrations that many of us share about how our city has been run in the past and the neglect and disparities we've seen in the historic parts of the city when it comes to how resources and development are distributed. We've also helped to change policy that helps Lubbock as a whole. And those changes, a lot of times, came with strong pushback from city leaders and other groups who prefer to maintain the status quo. And so because of my work with Lubbock Compact and my involvement in the community in other ways, I was asked if I would run for mayor by people all across the city, including several community leaders. And so after much thought, prayer, and soul searching, I decided to answer that call, and I ran for mayor the first time in May of 2022. Now, if you saw any of the news articles about my campaign launch today, one of the first things they wanted you all to know was that I lost that race to the current mayor. Of course, this is true, but I feel like it's important for you all to know what exactly happened in that election cycle that led to that outcome. Without any endorsements from the different organizations that endorse local candidates, and without a lot of money, I became one of the 2 frontrunners in that election. And with less than 12% voter turnout, I won nearly half the city in terms of voter precincts, and many other precincts were tied or very close. The energy in that election cycle was such that all the political actors and talk radio hosts on all sides thought that there was going to be a runoff between myself and the current mayor. And it wasn't just them. The Lubbock County Elections Office was actually preparing voting machines for a runoff election between myself and him. So what happened? Well, during early voting and on election day in 2022, we saw the same thing we always see. That same less than 10% of registered voters showed up for their guy, and most of the people who would prefer a different type of leadership stayed home. And that's how democracy works. Those who make the choice to show up to the polls determine the outcome, and those who choose to not show up, let them do it.
Yes.
And that's what we as a city have allowed to happen in every election cycle. But we don't have to settle for that.
Right.
We can do something about it.
Yes.
So just for perspective, many of you know that Lubbock Compact was the organization behind Freedom Act Lubbock, which is the initiative to decriminalize low-level marijuana possession in city limits. In 60 days, we collected 10,540 signatures on that petition, which will now be on the same May 2024 ballot that I'm going to be on. In the last race that I was in, about 19,000 people voted for the current mayor. If everybody that signed that petition shows up to vote this time, that's already more than half the amount that got him elected. If we then raise those numbers of voters in all of those precincts that I won, and where the numbers were tied or very close, then there will be more than enough votes to get me elected so that I can go to work for all of you.
Yes.
And I will work for all of you. No matter where you live in the city, no matter what your racial background is, no matter what your spiritual beliefs are, no matter what your sexual orientation or gender is, I will recognize you, I will respect you, and I will work for you. Thank you. I just have to take a moment because that's important.
Yes.
So, I'll talk about some things that I would like to work on as mayor.
All right.
And these are based on community feedback and my own experiences. So, first and foremost, I'll bring a different type of leadership than anything we've seen in recent times. And my style of leadership is using open communication, collaboration, and action to get results. I want to create an environment at City Hall where people not only feel heard and informed, but where people feel like they can trust their city government to work in the best interests of the community at large, and not just the friends and business interests of elected officials.
Exactly.
I want to address and develop solutions for the ongoing issues that other leaders have neglected or outright refused to do anything about. We still have an issue with loose dogs all over the city, so that many people can enjoy their neighborhood without fear of being attacked by strays. We still have many issues with codes enforcement all across the city, with illegal dumping, weeds, and other things creating eyesores and unsafe conditions in our neighborhoods. And aside from these ongoing issues, we can make improvements to our city. We just need leadership with the vision, the focus, and the know-how to do it. We can make improvements to our parks. We can bring back the public pools that the current council voted to close. We can add public pools where there are none. We can fund programs to revitalize older neighborhoods, and we can collaborate with other local entities to do more in that area. We can work to make our neighborhoods and our streets more pedestrian friendly, and we can do more to repair roads in the older parts of the city. We can work to address the issues of homelessness in Lubbock and develop solutions that work for everyone who is impacted by it. We can fill gaps in our mental health systems so that we can improve the overall mental health of our communities, which has many benefits outside of any one individual who may be struggling. We can do all of these things and more if we unite for our shared purposes and if we have leadership determined to improve our outcomes. And I am determined to improve our outcomes. So the only thing standing in the way of getting me elected so that I can go to work for all of you is all of us. We have the numbers if we show up. It's simple math. If we don't show up in enough numbers, then we'll have to settle for more of what we've been getting. So if we truly want something different, let everyone in your networks know that they have to get registered to vote and show up to the polls by the thousands. We have the power to change this already. We've had it for a long time. We just have to make the choice to use it. And you won't just be voting for me, because it's bigger than me. We'll be doing this for our families, our neighborhoods, and our Lubbock. said, I'll now officially say that it would be an honor to serve you all, and I'm asking for y'all's help and support as I run for mayor of Lubbock, Texas in 2023. Thank you. I'll now take any questions that you may have. Anybody?
I'm having with the mic.
Yeah, we got mics. I think that'll work. I'm not sure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith. I was wondering what you all plan on doing for the homeless community.
Yeah, that's a great question, Keith. Thanks. So, one of the things that we can do is make sure that our organizations that work with homelessness here in the city, which you're very familiar with, Keith, are well funded. And we can make sure that they don't lose their funding. And Open Doors funding lapsed during the last council, and they allowed that to happen. That's something that I was not in favor of allowing to happen. Open Door, from what I understand, they're the experts, they use the model of housing first. And from all of the research that I've seen, the housing first model is the best way to deal with homelessness. For everybody, right? Because there's issues that arise from that, not just from the person experiencing homelessness, but for businesses and people who live in homes and everything like that. The other thing that I would do that has unfortunately not been happening is work to make sure that the various entities are collaborating in some way on a regular basis. Because there's a lot of politics going on, there's a lot of people who just don't like each other, and none of that should matter when we're dealing with homelessness.
That's right.
Oh, one more question. What are you going to do about the homeless getting these camping tickets and everything?
Oh, Keith, you've asked me this several times. I'm working on that one, Keith, all right?
All right, Ginger has a question.
Okay, Adam, I will take exception with one thing that you said in what you had with your opening remarks. You said you're here to work for us. It's my experience that you're here to work with us.
First, I want to say thank you, Adam, for deciding to run again for us. I'm particularly curious about how you plan to make Lubbock more pedestrian friendly and pedestrian accessible. What specifically are you planning to implement, and what is the plan to make that go into effect?
Yeah, great question. So some of these things I mentioned, Lubbock Compact or myself or both have been working on various of these issues for a long time. One of the things that we advocated for to set us up better to deal with that is there's something called the Gateway Street Projects Fund, and that was created in 2014. And we take a lot of issue with how that was used. It's actually a great tool, but how it was used in the beginning, we don't feel like that was right. So the basics of it is, when you pay your utilities bill, all of your utilities here in Lubbock, a part of that is what's called a franchise fee. And that franchise fee is what utility companies have to use to be able to use our right-of-ways, okay? So the city takes 40% of those franchise fees and puts it into this Gateway Street Projects Fund. Now, that fund was used to create Milwaukee from 34th to 98th, the flyover for that from Marcia Sharpness and various other things. The problem with that is that that tax money came from all over the city. And it got used in 3 districts. We have 6. So until 2025, those other 3 districts are paying off those roads that they probably don't really use that much. The problem with the language of the Gateway Street Project Fund was that it could only be used for new roads. That's an issue because we got a lot of old roads. And it could also only be used for main arterial roads. So Lubbock Compact was able to successfully advocate, this one was not in the news or anything like that, but Thankfully, with the help of some council members, we were able to change that language to where it can be used for older roads, and it can also be used for feeder roads. So an arterial road would be something like 34th, 50th, something like that. A feeder road would be like Boston, something like that. So we can now use that for more roads, and when you do repairs with roads, just as what's happening in Dunbar, Manhattan area right now, when they go to fix the roads, they have to make sure that they're ADA compliant. And so they go in and they fix those. And so we won't be able to use those funds for any of the old roads until that debt falls off in 2025. And as soon as that does, I'm going to be watching the clock. And the minute it falls off, we're going to start heavily looking at the older roads. And since we paid for so many years for those newer roads, then we should be able to use some of those funds for our older roads. And so that will set us up for that.
My name is Kyle Lee. I'm actually the Assistant State Director for American Atheist. My question is, Cypress Ramos was killed in 2022. And I have emailed the current mayor and city council people about what can be done regarding the LGBT community, as Texas Tech and Lubbock, Texas is a very diverse community, and it seems like the city is not doing diversity and protecting the ones that are keeping the city alive. So my question is, when you become mayor, what changes can be made to help protect the LGBT community?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. That's a great question. So, one of the missed opportunities that this council had, and Lubbock Compact and Lubbock Pride and others were heavily involved in this, is we petitioned them to, and this doesn't necessarily deal directly with Cypress, but we have petitioned them to simply recognize Pride Month. And they've done proclamations for Slayton Bakery. They've done proclamations for a Spanish singer that comes here sometimes. They've done proclamations for International Lemur Day.
Wow.
But they refuse to even acknowledge that we sent them those letters asking them to simply recognize Pride Month. I think what our leaders choose to say or not say matters. And you know, you may have a lot of people in this city that say, well, I don't agree with people being gay. Well, the problem with that is that LGBTQ people exist. They just exist. So to say you don't agree with that, that means you don't agree with a human being's existence. And so we had a lot of issues that I won't go into here, because I'll get mad. It didn't turn out well. That's one of the first things that would be on my calendar to do, is to recognize Pride Month in Lubbock. We can do that. Another thing is, and whether they admit it or not, it's the unfortunate truth that within City Hall itself, we have inclusion issues. And one of the other things that was done by this new mayor, actually, was Nick and others were on a working group that was trying to develop a diversity and equity and inclusion office for the city of Lubbock. And this was dragged out for years and years. And then when the new mayor came in, originally he was saying, yeah, we're going to keep doing this. He immediately got in and disbanded that group.
Wow.
So those type of things we can do, because I don't think it's all on me. It's not all my decision, but we can create a working group to where we can have some accountability and we can start making changes in the culture of City Hall, because it starts there. And then I feel like that will go branch out to the rest of the community, or at least I hope it will.
Okay, I would just like to know, when you come there of Lubbock, Texas, I would like to know how you would work with our law enforcement right now, which is really much needed. whether they're good, whether it's ugly, bad, or whatever. It is much needed in our law enforcement around the city of Lubbock, the county of Lubbock. And will you be willing to work with them to get this stuff going? See if we can clear up some of the stuff that's happening on our city streets with our young people.
Yes.
This is what I would like to see. And this is what I would get out there and work with you for.
Yes.
And work with you on.
Yes. Well, thank you, Ms. Rose. I think it's really important to work with law enforcement. There are a lot of issues, but if I'm not, as a leader, willing to collaborate with them, how can we really hope to bridge that gap and find those solutions? And I don't necessarily agree with all the different department heads on everything. We don't have to. That's not really how life works. But I'm willing to stay in there for the sake of the collaboration to get the outcome. And there's a lot of things that the city can lend a helping hand with LPD. One of the things that was unfortunate that we could never get off the ground when I was working with the previous chief, Floyd Mitchell, was he heard us and he wanted to start helping at a community level. And he said, you know, other places I've been, they have like a LPD, like a softball team for youth, and it's an opportunity for youth to engage with officers, but also a chance for them to get some mentoring and some guidance, right, from responsible adults. And he couldn't get the money from the city to do that.
Yeah.
And so those type of things we can do. There's lots of things we can do, but I would definitely work with LPD because it's beneficial to everybody.
Adam, thank you for going in today. I appreciate you. My name is Mark Crossbow. I work with Lubbock County Juvenile Justice Center. My question is piggybacking yours. As you understand, or as you know, there's been a big rise in juvenile crimes, especially violent crimes committed with firearms. And one of the things that I hear at the Juvenile Justice Center on a daily basis is there's nothing for the young people out here to do. What are some of the things that you feel would be beneficial to implement in the city as far as helping these young kids get off these streets?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of those things I mentioned was I thought it was a huge mistake to take those public pools. That's one of the things that I remember myself personally spending 6 to 8 hours at the pool. When I would have spent that 6 to 8 hours, I definitely would have been doing something I wasn't supposed to do. Okay? And so I know that firsthand. And so that was a huge mistake. So we can bring those back, and like I said, add pools where there are none. So those sorts of things, improving our parks, those sorts of things are things that a city can do to provide things to do, right? The other part of it that I'm really focused on is that mental health aspect. And you know about the term social determinants of health, right? Parks and things have that has something to do with it, right? But also, there's a lot of gaps in our mental health systems to where there's some missing collaborations, there's sometimes no collaboration whatsoever, there's not a lot of communication between those things, and we're trying to get to a place where that's better. I've been meeting a lot with the director of the health department and everybody I can around this issue. And so what I would like to do is get to a place to where those systems are a lot better, because the ultimate goal for them is to catch mental health issues earlier. And with my work with O.L. Slayton, and you work a lot at home, at a younger and younger age, not to mention we were dealing with a lot, but we didn't have social media on top of it. And that just makes it worse. And so there's a lot of things these kids are dealing with. And it sort of all goes back to mental health, because if mom and dad aren't really in a mental space to be who they would like to be for those kids, then it just makes it a lot worse. And so I think that really working on our mental health system here, I really honestly truly believe that we could be a model for not only the rest of the state, but the rest of the world. Oh, sorry.
You mentioned that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Renee. Sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead, Renee. Sorry.
You had mentioned
mentioned about the making neighborhoods safe to walk again without feeling having the fear of being attacked by a loose dog. Lubbock does have a problem with loose animals, and as mayor, what do you plan to tackle that issue?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things we can do there. So there's really sort of three main pieces that I'm looking at when it comes to the animal control issue. Number one, our animal control facility is just not big enough for the city anymore. It was at one point, but it hasn't been for a really long time. They're constantly like 300 dogs over, and like it's like months long for somebody who's trying to like foster a pet they found to like get it off their hands. So the facility is not big enough. We can add to that facility. That's something the city can do. We can also, the second piece to this is being proactive about locating and getting those animals off the street. So we know, and if they don't know, I'm sure many people will tell them where the hot spots are, where the dogs are. But the idea here is to have at least one animal control officer whose job it is to simply patrol a district. So one for each district. And they just patrol those districts and proactively get those animals off the street. So the third piece sort of kind of goes with this also. The third piece is an education piece and then an enforcement piece. And so the enforcement side of it is if the dog they picked up from the neighborhood has a tag and it's somebody's dog, make it a pain for that person to have to go pick up their animal. And then give them a small ticket. It doesn't have to be a huge ticket. It could be like a parking ticket, $35 or something. And then if you get more and more and more, maybe that gets ramped up. I don't know. We can talk about that. But there has to be something to get pet owners to be responsible pet owners. Because that's a big part of the problem. And I've talked to Stephen Green, who's the director of the animal shelter, and he told me that. The other part, education part / community help part is a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of different services available at the animal shelter or other places around town that deal with animal things, cats, alley cats, and all these different sorts of things. But there's also best practices of how to be a good pet owner. The city of Lubbock can get on every news station at any time they want. Y'all remember those "the more you know" commercials? The city could have something like that, real short. It could even just be an image up there that says, "Hey, did you know? Boom, 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 do these things." And so that would go a long way. And then we can, the city can fund programs that animal services do all the time, which is to help people who can't afford to get their fence fixed. We can fund those programs so that more people can get their fences fixed if they're not able to do that. And I guess the only other thing there, which doesn't necessarily deal with dogs, it more so deals with cats. So the only organization here in Lubbock doing trap, neuter, and release, which just basically means they catch a stray cat and they neuter it and then release it, it can't have any more cats. Well, really, the city of Lubbock should be doing that as well. And so we can have that program in there.
Okay.
Oh, Joe, sorry.
What I've noticed is that sometimes when things happen with the city that I get really interested in, it's dead. I never see another word about it. In the newspaper, on television news, it's gone. About, I don't know, several weeks ago, I saw this very small article on everythinglubbock.com that said there was this altercation between a codes enforcement person and someone that he and another guy had gone out to check on about a violation, and the codes enforcement guy pulled out a gun. And I was like, what? You know, and since then, zip, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I said it in my statement, I'm very big on open communication. And I also would go further because, a lot of times, to be fair, city council meetings are super boring. There's really nothing going on. But the council knows, just like we all know, that sometimes there's stuff people are really interested in. When we know there's those things, like maybe decriminalizing low-level marijuana possession in the city, We should make the meeting as accessible as possible, at an accessible time as possible.
Right.
In the evening,
Yes.
because we understand as adults that most people during the day are either at work or at school. Now, you do have people that work at night. You're not going to be able to catch everybody, right? But you can try your best. And right now, we're not trying our best.
Right.
The other thing is that we could let people know further ahead of time on those meetings. See, the technical rule is that they have to post it 72 hours, 72 business hours before the meeting. And they will wait till the last second on the dot to post that when it's something they know that a lot of people want to have input on. 3 days is not a lot, and trust me, Lubbock Compact does this all the time. We have to essentially create a dissertation on something in 3 days so that we can go and speak on y'all's behalf about it, right? And so I think we can do a lot as the city when it comes to outreach, and I don't believe in, oh, well, we did the bare minimum. We did what we're required to do. We can do better than that.
Yeah.
And so also, when negative things happen, I think that the city should come out and say, hey, this thing happened. It's unfortunate it happened. This is what we're going to do about it. So that at least people feel safe that their codes guys aren't going to pull a gun on them. Oh, hey, Ann.
Kind of piggybacking on what you said about pools as a retired Division I swimmer. Lubbock leadership took away all the community pools except that one last year. Is there any viable solution to bring the pools back to the communities that lost them?
There it is. So when it comes to how things are funded in the city, there's really only 3 things you can do. You can raise taxes, which I don't want to do, and it really wouldn't even help. We could raise taxes 2,000%, it's not going to pay for these sorts of things. And so it really doesn't make sense to do that in any sense. So the other 2 things that cities can do is bonds. So they can put it to the voters and say, hey, we want to make some pools and whatever else, and the voters can decide that. And then the other thing is grants. And there's all sorts of various grants. There's state level grants. There's all the way up to like the American Rescue Plan Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. Like there's money out there, right? And so finding the funding is not really the issue. I think the issue is the vision of it. See, we understood what those public pools meant to us.
Yeah.
And if you maybe come from an area where you have access to private pools, maybe you got a pool in your backyard. Maybe you live in an apartment and you don't care because there's a pool in the apartment, right? Then you tend to not care about what other people have or don't have. But what we can do, what I would want to do, is open those 3 pools back up, the ones that were closed, and then improve the one that they left open, get them all brand new. There's no pool. Matter of fact, there's a deficit of park space in the south and the west of our city. Because a lot of those developers didn't want to put park space. They just didn't want to do it. And so there are some small little parks that are like private to neighborhoods, but that's another thing I want to do, which goes hand in hand with this pool idea, is there's a deficit of parks in Southwest Lubbock. Put park space there and create a public pool for Southwest Lubbock, because not everybody in Southwest Lubbock has access to private pools or a country club or anything like that. And so we can do that, but the other idea, see, one of the issues that the city has with outdoor pools is that they can only be open and generating revenue for certain times of the year. So I would bring back those pools, put them where they're not, and then have a new pool that's centrally located somewhere, that's an enclosed all year round pool. That would allow the city to bring in that revenue all year round and people would use it. There's a lot of opportunity there. So that's my ideas with pools.
I've got a question back here with John, and then we'll take next question, and then one more after that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Hey, John.
How are you?
Good.
So I read your piece on decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that was promoted by the disparity of the number of offenses in North and East Lubbock.
That was one of the things, yeah.
Okay. That were overrepresented, I guess. So my question is that, what is your plan on curbing that disparity? I'm not sure that marijuana is the only offense that views a disparity in citations in those areas. I feel that marijuana is not the issue is inequity. What plan do you have in place to begin addressing that issue?
Yeah, so like I was telling Ms. Rose, I'm a very big believer in collaborating with those departments. And I don't see a lot of that happening with our current mayor and council. I'm just going to be frank. They do it, they come in here, they come to their meetings, do what they got to do. Ms. Sheila works her butt off, I can tell you that. And so some of them are out there from time to time, but they're not focused on that. I will be focused on going down there to their office and having those conversations, building those relationships so that we can have the broader conversation, because the only place where I really disagree with you at is that, yes, marijuana is not everything that's a disparity, but it is one thing. And there's so many that at least what we can do is do it piece by piece, because it's much harder to tackle a whole bigger thing, right? The other thing I would like to just sort of add here is that the disparity part of it was one of the reasons why Lubbock Compact took that issue up. The other part of it is the use of our resources. And the amount of officers we use on 600 to 700 arrests is a lot. It's a lot of resources. Then it has to go to the DA's office and go through that whole system, and they're already shorthanded. It's causing a lot of issues for something that's already happening on a daily basis, or we wouldn't arrest 600 to 700 people for it. And so all of the bad things that people are saying would happen are not happening. They're driving up and down the streets right now. They're at your jobs right now. These are soccer moms, these are professionals, these are bankers, these are everybody, right? And so that was just one piece of it. But to answer your question, the collaboration is going to be a big deal on that. I believe that Freedom Act helps with that. But the other piece will be the ongoing work of trying to get them to understand that enforcement should be equal across the city. Right. And it's going to be an ongoing thing. But I'm willing to stick in there. Okay, it was...
Nick Herbstreit. I know you touched on mental health a little bit already, but I know that's something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. We have a governor that loves to blame mental health on, or blame mass shootings on mental health. We have a state senator, Charles Perry, that is getting awards for being a champion for mental health. Yet Lubbock still sits 41st in accessibility to mental health. Lubbock was also named this year as the city of Lubbock with the highest number of youth attempted suicides. So what can you as mayor do to help kind of flip the script and make Lubbock a better place, and let the state of Texas realize that this is an issue that's more important and that they're really not giving any lip service to?
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point about the state leadership making all those statements, because one of the things that I would definitely do as mayor is go visit Mr. Perry, Mr. Burrows, and all of these folks and say, hey, that's really great that y'all believe in mental health and funding mental health. Could you do it, please? Because the thing that I find pretty ridiculous is that Lubbock is, so if y'all weren't aware, Lubbock is the capital of the Plains. We're not the Dallas of the Plains. We're not any other place of the Plains. We are the capital of the Plains. The area that we serve with our medical services and our education services is the size of the state of South Carolina. We are the capital of the Plains. We don't have youth mental health inpatient facilities here. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
We don't even have enough services for the adults. The other issue with this, in my opinion, is that we focus a whole lot on the people who are dealing with the worst psychosis, which is worthy pursuit. We need to expand, because a lot of these things, as you and I know, and as anybody who works in the school system knows, are a lot more subtle than that. There's a lot of people dealing with depression, which may not necessarily be bipolar disorder, but it's still a struggle and it still leads to all sorts of other things that we don't want to happen. And so we need to expand and start to look at what are we doing for those folks that are dealing with these more common mental health issues. And doing the outreach for that, if anybody would like to look at it, and it's out there, the city did put in on this. There's been a report made called the Meadows Report. There's some ideas in there, and I think there's some good ideas in there. Some of that has been carried out, a lot of it has not. So we can look at some of that, but before we can do all of that, we've got to get everybody to collaborate. We've got to get all the mental health entities to collaborate so that we can constantly work on these things, and there is a group like that. But the thing that we're not doing well, in my opinion, is empowering it by funding it. And if we empowered it to actually carry out the ideas that these professionals know that they need to do, then I think that'll go a long way.
Does anyone else have a question? This will be our last one.
Okay.
This is kind of two pieces wrapped in one. They both go hand in hand. Lubbock has kind of a reputation for small businesses, not a good reputation. It's a pretty widely circulated joke that Lubbock is actually quite difficult when it comes to opening new small businesses. And at the same time, here in downtown, we have lots of small gems, some of the cafes, restaurants to go to, really nice. But I didn't find out about them until I lived in Lubbock for 3 years as a student, simply because this part of town is so difficult and inaccessible. Do you have any plans in place to benefit small businesses and to allow more small businesses to thrive and come up in Lubbock? And at the same time, is there anything that's going to be done to service this part of Lubbock, this downtown part of Lubbock, and bring it back for those small businesses?
Yeah, so that is a big question, Vaughns. Just FYI. There is one thing that could happen relatively easily in terms of helping small businesses get off the ground or thrive that we've done when there's been ARPA money, but I feel like there's other ways that we can do it on a consistent basis, where you can give micro grants to small businesses. What we've seen when they've done those micro grants is, in my opinion, the amount of outreach to some of the folks who could use it the most was not done. And so we could do a lot better with outreach in a lot of ways for the city in that regard. Now, as far as downtown and the issues with it, that is a complex thing. So downtown was made into what's called a TIF. It's a tax increment funded project. And there's a TIF board, and that TIF board works hand in hand with LEDA and Market Lubbock. And they have their priorities, and the community has theirs a lot of times. And a lot of times those things don't really line up. There's also an issue downtown where you have property owners who have bought up properties over time, and they're just letting them sit in anticipation of what? I don't know. But they're just letting them sit. And so that's a real issue. It's not an easy fix for that. So I hate to sound bad, but downtown's going to be a while. Because, again, a lot of this, I would say most of our issues boil down to lack of collaboration between these shareholders. And a lot of times when the shareholders disagree, they just wall each other off and they never talk again. And I don't think that benefits anybody. I think that we should have those open conversations. We should be allowed to be able to disagree and at least try to move the needle in a better direction for everybody. So that's some things that we can do for small businesses. But thank y'all, everybody.
Yeah, let's give it up one more time for Yeah, I'll keep my remarks very brief, you know, Adam is my dear friend, my colleague, my writing partner, my co-host, and somebody who that I love very much and respect so much. So it means a lot for me to be here and speak on his behalf at this last moment. Some of you may be familiar with this aphorism by a great American, Mr. Fred Rogers, who said he was recalling an interaction he had with his mother when he was a young man, where he kind of witnessed this tragedy on TV, and his mom advised him, in a dark time, look for the helpers. Yeah. And I'd be very confident, speaking on Adam's behalf in this matter, that I look at this room and I want you to know how much you all mean to us. You mean the world to us, really. So many people in this room have helped us in so many ways, and we wouldn't have achieved nearly what we have without all of your support in every endeavor. So thank you for that. Folks, now I'm going to go into my Bernie mode where it's like I'm once again asking for your support. We know that in the last campaign, more than $160,000 was raised for Adam's competitor. And that money goes a long way to share the message of a candidate. And so one thing that we're asking for everybody to do is to look in their heart, and if they are so inclined and so able, to give to Adam's campaign and give generously and give as often as you can. We know that might not be in everybody's ability right now, and so as you also all will know, many of you having helped us with campaigns, public events, that we are also going to need a lot of volunteers to hit the streets, to use phone banks, to do all the activities that a campaign needs. So before you leave tonight, we're asking, one, that everybody here sign up on our sign-in sheet so that we can contact you and find out where it is that you can plug into this campaign, because we'll really need people at all levels and all places, and I assure you, if you're willing to, we can find a place for you to help. And also, in this time of giving, we hope that you will be an early supporter of Adam's campaign and give as much as you can. So, once again, thank you to everybody here. Thank you, Adam, for always being there for us. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Thank you for being here.